Let's talk about how your laminate flooring gets installed. There are some really important things to understand and remember when you're doing a laminate floor installation. One is that laminate is a floating floor installation. And so the floor is not being adhered to the subfloor. It is being installed to float by design, which makes it a very easy installation. There are some important things to remember when you're going to install to prepare for your installation. One is that the product does need to be acclimated to the environment it's going to be installed in. Most manufacturers recommend a minimum of 48 hours acclimation for the product to be in the room that it's going to be installed in. Let's also talk about what are the proper tools you're going to need to install your flooring. These are some of the major tools that you are going to need. One is a tapping block. Two are spacers for the expansion space around the perimeter of the room. Another is a tape measure, a rubber mallet hammer, a pull bar, a small amount of glue for some tricky areas, and you're going to need an underlayment if your product does not already have an attached underlayment on it. It's important that you maintain the temperature and relative humidity inside the room, meaning you should not install laminate flooring if the HVAC system is not operational. All manufacturers have ranges of temperature and relative humidity that the room should stay within. It's a pretty broad range, but you want to make sure you stay within those ranges for temperature and humidity. As a rule of thumb, you always want to have about 5 to 8% more material than the actual square footage of the room. This will allow you to make cuts and deal with any waste factors that you might have. Additionally, it's important to prepare the subfloor before you install it. A major challenge would be if you have an uneven subfloor or if you have surface imperfections in the subfloor. Your floor should be flat, it should be level, and it should be free of any debris. Be sure to check your manufacturer's installation instructions to identify exactly what the flatness and what the levelness of that subfloor should be prior to installation. Every box of material either has inside of that box an insert sheet that has installation instructions, or in many cases, the installation instructions for the product are printed right on the outside of the box. So you can refer to those instructions all the time to make sure you're following the guidelines of the manufacturer. You definitely want to check the products as you're installing them to make sure you identify if there's any imperfections, if there's any issues with the planks as you're installing them. Make sure it's the right color that you selected. Most manufacturers will not pay labor for a claim when the product is installed with visible manufacturing or other defects in the subfloor, in the environment you're installing them, or the actual planks themselves. When you're installing this product over concrete or below grade, it is important to understand that not only do you need an underlayment, but you also need a moisture barrier to go underneath the floor. That moisture barrier will protect the floor from any moisture, hydrostatic moisture that could be coming up from the floor, from the concrete, and getting into the floor and affecting your laminate flooring. So it's important to have that moisture barrier underneath there. And then having a proper underlayment is important. Most underlayments are what are known as 3-in-1 or 4-in-1 underlayments. They're not only underlayments that meet the manufacturer's specifications, but they also have a built-in moisture barrier. And so if your product doesn't already have underlayment attached, you want to get an underlayment that already has a built-in moisture barrier if you're installing below grade or over concrete. If your floor already has the underlayment attached to the planks, well, then the only thing you're going to need is the moisture barrier. Again, only if you're installing over concrete or below grade. If you're installing above grade over plywood or on a second floor level over plywood, a moisture barrier is not required, but underlayment still is required. It is important to understand that if you're working with a waterproof or water-resistant laminate and you're installing it in a wet room, kitchen, bathroom, mudroom, powder room, it is important that when you install that floor that you seal the perimeter of that room. You can use a backer rod and you can use a adhesive, let's say a silicone-based caulking around the perimeter of the room. And this will prevent any water, any spills, any liquid from getting behind the baseboards into the drywall or underneath the floor where it can create problems. So if you're installing the product in a room that's not really susceptible to frequent spills or heavy moisture or that kind of thing like a bedroom, it's not really necessary to seal the room with that silicone perimeter seal. Once you get started, laminate flooring is really very, very easy to install. All of the different locking systems that are on the market get installed similar, but not all the same. Be sure to refer to your manufacturer's instructions to understand exactly what locking system you have, exactly how that should be installed, and even look at some YouTube videos of some installations being done using that product, and that will help get you started, and that will help make sure you have the perfect installation.